sadly, John Siebert was accused of being a pedophile. Nothing to do with me, but when he was interviewed, he blamed me for the accusation. I had to find that out by subpoenaing those documents from the Department of Children's and Families in Connecticut. Now let's talk for a minute about Joe Burke and Ken Gomez. Ken Gomez was thrown out of Miami, Florida, was visiting psychiatrists there, had all kinds of personal problems. He latched on to Joe Burke in his office on 3rd Avenue. Joe Burke and Russo and Burke have made a career out of shaking down people. They have a habit. When they get involved in litigation, the first thing they do is bombard you with phone calls, faxes, emails, pure, unadulterated harassment. Joe Burke and Russo and Burke have been accused of extortion, have been accused of abusing litigants, have been accused of harassing people. Kenneth Gomez is their front runner. He's like the 21st century Howdy Doody. And George Pavia is the Buffalo Bob. Now, the fact of the matter is, Joe Burke has engaged in perjury. Joe Burke has engaged in secretion of evidence. Joe Burke has compromised at least 2 referees. All of this is well documented. And I urge all of you to please go on to Scam Raiders and take a look. Now let's go into a couple of other things quickly concerning Mr. Gomez's attempt to character assassinate me. Number one, Mr. Gomez, in his arrogance, decides to talk about my being a nuisance. Well, if writing letters to George Pavia for harassing me, for walking around the corridors in the nude with a bathrobe, for harassing my wife, to having his dog going around without a leash, for stealing my rent stabilization rights, in exchange for that, writing letters to his office, if that's a nuisance, then I'm Mickey Mouse. Judge Madden rewrote the statute of nuisance to accommodate George Pavia. Why? Because in these courts, compromising a judge is simple. You just have to know the right people. Please go on to Scam Raiders and look at how judges work. I'm not new to this. I lived it with my dad, with Johnny Cruz, with Roy Cohn, with Sidney Korshak. So I'm going to present to all of you in weeks and weeks to come how it works. Just the magic tricks. The way David Copperfield makes the Statue of Liberty disappear. Now let's talk about my mother's affidavit that Mr. Gomez chooses to make a big thing about. In 1987, my mother was ill. My mother had cancer. My mother, for years, had mental disorders. She had schizophrenic tendencies. As a matter of fact, my brother and my mother took it upon themselves when I was at college to take my boxer dog that was 4 years old, that was in perfectly good health, and euthanize him because my mother didn't feel like taking care of the dog. Now that gives you a kind of a picture about my mother. Now, how could one assume that an 87-year-old woman would be able to remember that I took money out of my brother's piggy bank? Now, all you got to do is look at this affidavit. It's almost laughable. What makes it even more laughable is 3 things. At the very time my mother supposedly signed this affidavit, I was involved in a major custody battle with my former wife to obtain sole and separate custody of my then 6-year-old daughter, Alex. I was in the White Plains Courthouse before Judge Sandra Miller, who now is in the Appellate Division 2nd Department. Judge Miller had me psychiatrically evaluated, psychologically evaluated by chief psychiatrists at the Westchester County Medical Center, and ultimately I was awarded sole and separate custody. If anybody wants to believe my mother's affidavit, you would have to disbelieve Judge Miller's intelligence to appoint me the sole custodial parent of my daughter. The other interesting thing about it is my mother had no money. The fact of the matter is, and you can all go and look at this, New York Magazine did an article, and it's on Google, on June 14th, 1976. If you want to look at it, go on to Google, Aaliyah Couri, New York Magazine. Low politics in Albany, Rockefeller finesses a scandal. That scandal involving Judd Morehouse, my dad, Marty Epstein of the SLA, Johnny Cruz, and others will give you a picture of what was going on then. My father lost his money. I supported my family. I sent my brother to college. I helped my father create a duty-free business with my money. The fact is, my father was extremely ill, and my brother took advantage of him. Sad as it is, my brother had his own agenda, and his wife had his own agenda. My brother was expelled from Brunswick School for cheating and stealing. I protected him. Sad as it was, my brother, when my dad died, converted stock that belonged to my daughter to himself and to his wife. I had to sue. My brother concocted this affidavit to shore up his position in that lawsuit. Judge Charles Bryant, the U.S. District Court in the Southern District of New York, had that case. Judge Bryant refused to even entertain that affidavit and told my brother's lawyer, Parker Chapin, if he wants to bring Mrs. Couri in, subpoena her. He did, but she didn't show up because that affidavit was created for her by my brother and her lawyer, Mr. Kurtzman. Mr. Kurtzman is a liar. Mr. Kurtzman knows me well, and I know everything that went on there. So, Mr. Kurtzman, I'm not interested in your phony affidavits because I know you. The fact of the matter is, Judge Bryant knew what was going on, and Judge Bryant refused to entertain any paper from my brother. And then when my brother, after he lost the case and was forced to pay my daughter, asked for the file to be sealed. And I remember, as it was this moment, Judge Bryant said, "Not on your life." The fact of the matter is that these guys want to gang up on me and want to try to shut me up. In my last breath, they're not going to. I'm going to expose all of them for what they are. I'm not going to be intimidated by the absurdities of Mr. Gomez's antics. And I'm saying here and now, Mr. Gomez, Mr. Pavia, if you want to deny the charges that I have lodged against you in Scam Raiders or on any of these tapes, come forward and deny them like a man. Don't character assassinate me on the old theory, if the facts are bad, argue the law. If the law is bad, argue the facts. And if both are bad, attack the adversary. Last but not least, Mr. Gomez, you make a point of a little video that my daughter took of me in 2004. And you mentioned that I'm dancing like Fred Astaire. The fact is that video was taken in 2004 and posted in 2007. And I point out to you, sir, it's none of your damn business. I thank all of you for listening. You're going to hear more about these guys soon.